All right, you welcome back. It's still TVC Breakfast, and let's talk about what has been on the front burner, an issue that isn't going to go away
Not
shortly.
anytime soon.
Yes, the suspension of Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Onnoghen, from his position of the Chief Justice of Nigeria. It continues to generate reactions from the public.
Absolutely. Well, the Senate has now filed a suit at the Supreme Court seeking to know whether President Muhammadu Buhari is constitutionally empowered to suspend Justice Walter Onnoghen. Now, the lawmakers also want the Apex Court to decide whether the action of the president amounts to usurpation of their powers as provided for in Section 292 of the Constitution.
But the All Progressives Congress, the APC caucus, and the Senate are not a part of the suit. They say that the Senate never met to take any resolution to go to the Supreme Court to seek an interpretation of President Buhari's action. In a related development, the NBA, in a show of support to embattled Justice Onnoghen, has directed lawyers to observe a 2-day warning boycott of courts nationwide beginning today.
Well, civil society organizations and a group of lawyers also staged a peaceful protest in Abuja over their displeasure of President Buhari's decision. But supporters of the president staged a protest upholding President Buhari's action to suspend Justice Walter Onnoghen. The protesters say the federal government's move is in line with the bid to fight corruption.
Well, let's now bring in a lawyer, Mr. Ahmed Abbas, who will be putting this in bird's eye view for us. Thank you very much indeed for coming.
Thank you.
Right. Let me start by asking the action of the leadership of the Senate, led by Senator Bukola Saraki, going to the Supreme Court to seek interpretation as to whether the president has got the power to suspend or remove the CJN without the two-thirds majority of the Senate. And second, if the president has also got the power or the authority to remove the CJN, or I beg your pardon, to appoint an acting CJN without, where there is no vacancy. Is there anything wrong, or what's your reaction to this?
Thank you. I'm glad about the move of the Senate, because the honest truth is that the action of the president has polarized stakeholders into two schools of thought. Those who are saying the president doesn't have the power, and those who say the president has the power. And as I speak with you, even the opinions expressed by even senior advocates are simply opinion until the pronouncement by the court. And so once there's a dispute over constitutional issues, the most civilized thing to do is to approach the court and say, please interpret whether the president has, until the court makes such pronouncement. But you and I are just expressing personal opinion. But the law says from that there are always two sides to any issue. Yeah, that's why in the court you always have two sides.
But what do you make of APC Senate, the caucus, APC caucus, saying that, look, we are not part of this attempt to seek interpretation?
No, the APC is basically a party. It's a party, political party. It's not the government. So what the Senate has done as an arm of the government that feels its authority or its power has been usurped by the executive is going before the court to ask the court for interpretation. And like I said, that is the most civilized thing to do. Once there's an issue, there's a big constitutional issue before us. That's why there are two schools of thought. Some senior advocates saying, yes, the president doesn't have the power, the president has the power. If you ask me for my personal opinion, it's a different thing. But for me, it's a welcome development because the court will definitely let us know where we actually stand. Yes.
And I wonder how challenging or otherwise it would be for the Supreme Court to come up with a decision that will be acceptable to all sides involved. Because number one, you have a Supreme Court where all the judges, the justices, except, of course, for JSC Bagay, who shunned the swearing in of election, tribunals by acting CJN. That in itself says something, that the other members of the Supreme Court are not in tandem with what is going on right now. They're not in agreement with the developments in the Supreme Court. You have that. And it is this same Supreme Court that the Senate is taking its case to.
Yes. That's how the law is.
Beyond the outcome or the result that we expect to get from the Supreme Court, what kind of Supreme Court do you think we'll be getting going forward? You have the acting CJN in the person of, Justice Mohammed Tanko, who right now is having a very, very stressful, problematic beginning to his tenure.
I think the government actually made a mistake somewhere. They should have taken the time. The president usually, if you interrogate him, sometimes when people are clamoring for the removal of security chiefs, removal of this, Babachi Relawa, he says he takes his time to make decisions. Even in the ministerial appointment, he took his time. I would have also expected the president to have taken his time before making this decision.
Well, some say, as a matter of fact, they actually say, the president's spokesman, Garba Shehu, said these issues had been on at the time Walter Onnoghen, the CJN, the now suspended CJN, was going to be appointed. But the president wanted to take his time. And obviously, maybe he has, and he's come to a place now. Maybe the timing is in question now. He has decided that this is the move to make right now.
The president would have saved us the kind of challenge and problem we have if right from inception you want to appoint somebody and his competence, his qualification is in doubt.
His integrity.
Yes, it's like you want to employ the services of a pilot to fly an aircraft, and you are aware from inception that he has a mental problem. Yet, you employ him to fly an aircraft. And you are not telling us, probably towards the,
as the aircraft is going to land?
To land, that, please, I think we need to remove this pilot because he's mentally
unstable.
For me, I do not.
Diligence.
No. I do not buy that. Once you are aware that there's a problem, you should have resolved the problem, knowing fully well, this is not just a judge, but someone that is going to occupy the highest position of another arm of government.
But don't forget, it took the acting president,
Yes.
Professor Yemi Osinbajo,
Yes.
to confirm the CJN.
Yes.
As Walter Onnoghen as CJN,
Yes.
while the president was away.
Yes. It's assumed that they must have done their due diligence.
Okay.
That's the assumption that you have done, because normally security, SSA, DSS, they conduct background check on most of the principal officers, and see, the crisis we are facing is basically you can't just remove the head of an arm of government. If you make it easy for an arm of government, if you make the impeachment process of the president so easy that the Senate can sit within 24 hours and impeach a president, you will have monumental crisis in any political system. That's why principal officers, whether the Senate president, the president of the executive arm, or the Chief Justice of the Federation, the process for their removal are usually a little bit cumbersome. It is to bring stability and certainty. If you can wake up on a Monday morning and decide that we do not want the president, and you can change the president before Tuesday morning, you're going to have crisis. That's why the laid down procedures are there. They should follow the procedure. That is just what everybody is saying.
All right, because just before we go to our guest on the phone, it is important that I ask you this. As a constitutional lawyer, and with some of the legal challenges that we have faced, even to this point where we have been thrown into a constitutional crisis, do you sometimes wonder the sort of legal advice that the president gets?
You do not need to be a soothsayer or a prophet. Sometimes yes, most actions. That's why the president should just have a sense of history, because most times the people surrounding the president do not actually give advice that relates to the welfare of the society. Most advice is just about personal. It's just sometimes they are political, or we want our party the way and manner parties in power, try to maintain themselves in power, sometimes they ill-advise the president. It's obvious. Some of them are just sentimental, they are politically inclined, and all the rest of them. Like this, for me as a person, I do not have any problem with Onnoghen's. I mean, because the essence of the code of conduct is to maintain, high degree of morality
Standards,
in public service. So if you have so much amount of money, humongous amount of money in your account that you cannot defend before the public, if you can't tell us how you made those money as a public servant, then I have a problem with it, because we all agree that corruption is a major problem. That's on the one side. But the issue is that if there are laid down procedure on how you remove a person, do so. For me, if you look at the entire act establishing the bureau and the tribunal, if you look at the I don't know, except I will be tutored as of today, I do not see where the tribunal has the power to make recommendation for suspension.
Okay. All right, let's bring in another lawyer, Kennedy Osunwa. Good morning. Thanks for joining us on the show. So much has been happening as far... Oh, it looks like we lost connection there. We'll try to reestablish, the link so that we can have Mr. Osunwa's input in this discussion. So where do we go from here? Because it looks like it's the judiciary that's actually on trial, as some have interpreted it. And of course, the opposition candidate for the presidential election, Atiku Abubakar, did give a State of the Union, State of the Nation address, almost, seeming presidential there, saying that this administration should not take Nigeria to the precipice and even go beyond it. A lot of people are hoping that that will not happen. Now you have the global community, the international community, the US, the UK, the EU, raising concerns about the timing of this decision to suspend the CJN. Is that the crux of the matter?
You see, in decision making, you have to look at the larger picture. My actions, how will it be interpreted? And rule of law, we say democracy and rule of law, democracy and rule of law. The distinguishing factor between civilized clime and Banana Republic is that in Banana Republic, a leader wakes up and says, this is what I feel like doing.
Anything happens.
Anything happens. Wake up on the other side of the bed and say, well, this morning, this is what I did. But in civilized crime, there are laid down rules and procedure. Someone said about the American system that because the institutions and the rule of law is in place, it can make a very intelligent, competent president looks impotent. Where you do not have rule of law, an imbecile can become very powerful, waking up to do whatever they do. In Nigeria today, what everybody is saying, the Code of Conduct Act stipulates how you can bring a public officer to trial.
Yeah.
A public officer to trial.
Yeah.
The speed at which his suspension was carried out, I wish that same speed can be injected into so many other problems that are bedeviling this nation, killings and all the rest of them. But since we have the courts there and an arm of government is already approaching the court,
all right,
that is how to bring stability. Because now there is flexing of muscle between the judiciary and the...
All right, can I put you on pause?
Yes.
Let's go to guest on the phone so we don't lose him on the phone again. A constitutional lawyer as well, Kennedy Osunwa. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
Yes, good morning. How are you today?
Very well, thank you very much. Ngozi and I are here. Well, we'd like to find out what your opinion is as far as the step that has been taken by the Senate to seek the interpretation of the Supreme Court vis-a-vis the action of the President.
Yes, I have to commend the action of the Senate for going to the Supreme Court of Nigeria to seek immediate interpretation of Constitution, particularly Section 292, Sub 1A, setting out the conditions upon which the CJN may be removed. However, while commending the government of the APC on corruption, on the crusade against corruption, suffice it to state that the presumption of innocence as encapsulated under Section 36(5) of 1999 Constitution, as amended, is still in favor of the CJN. Therefore, it is my humble opinion that while the government of APC is non-tolerant to corruption, but the procedures for fighting corruption as laid down by the enabling laws must be followed. So I am of the opinion that what the state has done to go to Supreme Court for immediate interpretation is a right step in the right direction.
Yes, but the federal government says that a lot of people, including all those who have been criticizing, even as a matter of fact, a section of the media, has not, given any, the kind of focus that it should to the real issues here, losing sight of the substance and, talking about the process. Are we losing sight of the substance here that the chief, law interpreter of the nation is found culpable, is found to be, or allegedly to be corrupt, or, not to be above board and all of that? Are we losing sight of that?
Is allegedly. That is a criminal allegation. We are still bound by the law. Despite the fact that, yes, he has left some things undone. He has said this or that. But it is still a court of competent jurisdiction that ought to pronounce him guilty. And that is the way.
Okay, it looks like we're still having issues with the connection there. Okay.
We know that the president is fighting corruption, and we love him for that. But he should also go by the law.
All right, you stay on the line. We'll be back with you. Let's talk to our guest here in the studio, Barrister Ahmed Abbas. Well, the Nigerian Bar Association has asked its members to embark on a 2-day strike, warning strike, boycott of the courts for 2 days. What do you make of the action?
Well, I think because the bar is actually a stakeholder, critical stakeholder in the present challenge that we are going through, and I think they feel there's an assault, there's an executive assault on the judiciary, and that it is time for them to rise up in defense of the judiciary, because as an arm of government, this is an independent, it's also a separate arm of government, and when the executive can do and undo in that arm of government, it sends a very, very wrong signal to the society. It means there's a problem, and for me, any action taken in defense of ensuring that there is, adherence to the rule of law, I mean, it's a welcome development. Like my brother said, look, our laws are basically divided into two. You have what we call the substantive law. They define what offenses are. And we also have procedural laws. Even when police officers arrest an armed robber in the process of committing robbery with gun, there's a breach of substantive law. the procedural law says you must bring such a person before the court of law. No police officer is allowed to pass judgment on that robber by shoot, even in the course of finding the robber committing the offense. You apprehend him and bring him before the court. It is only a competent court of law that can pronounce that based on the evidence adduced against you, we hereby find you guilty and sentence you to death by hanging. Procedural law, substantive law. Even if Onnoghen.
But that's procedural law that you talk about.
Yeah.
I mean, the federal government has said that the suspension of the CJN was based on the recommendation of the CCT.
I will ask you as a media outfit to please peruse the act establishing the tribunal and see whether they have the power. Under section 23, it says that when an officer is found guilty, it stipulated the 3 mode of punishment the tribunal can impose. Check the act from beginning to end. Just 3. 1, vacation of office. 2, preclusion from holding office for a period not exceeding 10 years. 3, seizure and forfeiture of whatever be the assets that are the subject matter of the investigation and trial. Those are the 3. Check. You can't import.
Okay. All right, let's
what is not in the law.
Let's put you on hold first of all, as we quickly bring you this. The National Judicial Council, the NJC, would be holding an emergency meeting today in Abuja over the suspension of Justice Walter Onnoghen.
And our reporter, Celestine Area, joins us now from the venue where the meeting is to hold. Hello, Celestine. A very top of the morning to you, and good to see you this morning. Well, tell us how it is going at the moment. What time is the meeting expected to hold?
Yes, the meeting is slated for 10 a.m. We're still awaiting the arrivals of members of the NJC, which are basically judges. And also there will be a lot of deliberations today which will center around the suspension of the CJN and also the appointment of an acting CJN. And as presumed, we believe they would either align themselves with the decision of the president or go against it, or also talk about raise issues concerning the fact that they were not the one that recommended to the president, Justice Tanko Mohammed, for appointment. And also if they have made their investigations into the charges leveled against the CJN and also make recommendations for him to excuse himself of office or also raise issues to his suspension.
Do you have any insight into what the NJC could come up with at the end of their meeting today?
Yeah, for now we can't tell for sure because we don't know who will be chairing the meeting or who will be attendance, if the CJ himself will be attending or if the acting Chief Justice Chief Justice of Nigeria will be chairing the meeting, and also if his deputy will be assisting him also. So for now we are not very certain of that information.
Okay.
All right.
We'll have to
correspondent Celestina Area, stay on the story for us. We will get back to you in the course of discussions to, of course, give us further updates.
Yeah. Okay. If we still have Kennedy Osunwa there on the phone.
All right,
we don't have
Kennedy
we don't have him.
phone.
Now, this issue of the acting CJN, Mohammed Tanko, is another matter that we need to look at very seriously because as soon as he was sworn in as acting CJN, he got to work. You know, was inaugurating the 250-man election tribunal. Of course, this is a major task ahead of everybody, you know, in the country, including the judiciary. What happens to his actions? Will they be null and void at the end of the day with all of this, you know, huge shadow hanging over his appointment? Because Olisa Abakoba, former NBA president, has gone to court, you know, saying that the acting CJN should not have, you know, allowed himself to be sworn in as acting in acting capacity.
Well, it depends on the individual's perspective. There are people probably maybe if they are looking at it from a different perspective, would have said, so I'm declining this, depending on which side of the school of thought he belongs to, that, oh, there's no vacancy. And once there's no vacancy, how do you take up an appointment that is not vacant? So, but like I said, eventually, the courts, the Supreme Court would help us in this issue, since the Senate has already gone to the Supreme Court. So let's probably wait for the outcome of this thing. If the Supreme Court says the president has no power and that Onnoghen has to go back to his seat, then he will be back. And whatever be the action of the acting CJN, if it doesn't have any serious legal implication that one is approaching the court for, if they are basically administrative, whosoever, if the CJN reassumes his office, he could dismantle everything that the acting CJN has done.
All right,
it
now
will be of no effect.
The CCT having suspended hearing indefinitely.
Yes.
Is the president now going to reverse his decision and allow status quo to remain pending the determination of the suit
That is what
at the
he should.
Supreme Court? And then there is also another, because the reason that the CCT suspended indefinitely, the reason that they gave is that there has been an appeal at the Court of Appeal.
Yeah.
So pending the determination of that one, it has to be indefinite. So is the president, amid all of this, is the president going to reverse his decision?
No.
Reinstate him?
No. The status quo as at today. The status quo as at today is that the CJN has been suspended.
But the NBA is saying reinstate him.
Reinstate him.
It can't.
And even the CJN, the suspended CJN, has said that he is still CJN, that he has not...
There's a conflict now. The presidency is saying there is an acting CJN. And the suspended CJN says, I'm still the substantive CJN. There's a conflict. There's a conflict.
Yes.
What is the status quo? The status quo is that there's an existing acting CJN. And there's also an existing suspended CJN.
And in the midst of all of that, respected lawyer Femi Falana has said that the government should, rescind its decision and allow the CJN, in the person of Walter Onnoghen, to actually resign honorably.
That is...
Are those options?
Yes, they are. But it will take political courage. Because it will be an admission that in the first instance, there was a mistake on our part. It will take a morally courageous leader to own up to an error. We made a mistake. Let's reverse ourselves, come back to the drawing table and create a win-win situation for both parties. Because as of today, the honest truth is that there's a moral burden, even on the CJN himself. Because the fundamental challenge that brought us into this quagmire is we found money in your account that you can't explain as a public servant, 1 billion naira. Where did you get the money from? So if the presidency can own up that, look, there was an error, procedural error, we are reversing ourselves and probably holding a stakeholders meeting and say, look, for the sanctity of that office, tender, resign. And so that we can, allow fresh air to breathe into that office. Yeah, it's an option. But I doubt with the kind of heat and the muzzle flexing of, yes, we told the part of rule of law. No, there's so much contention. I doubt whether the presidency can muzzle the moral courage, the political will required to reverse itself.
And Barrister Ahmed, sorry, just a moment. It was Thomas Jefferson who once said that where there is injustice, where injustice becomes a law, resistance becomes a duty. I just hope we do not degenerate into this pit. Well, thank you very much indeed for coming to talk to us on this issue.
Thank you.
All right.
Of course, Ahmed Abbas is a lawyer looking at the legal implications of all these developments for us this morning. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, moving on now. The governor of Lagos
I understand
State.
we have to take a break.
Akinwumi Ambode. Yes, you'll get to hear more about that. He's been given another chance. Find out when we come back.
Stay
from
with
this
us.
break.